Welcome to the Sports Angle on PR Connections Radio, the voice of new media. I'm your host, Ian Rickelli. The sports world has been on fire this past week. The MLB Trade Deadline coming up. You got some teams that are on the hot end, teams on the low end. There are a good amount of teams in the NBA making moves. You heard about the trade speculation involving a superstar in the NBA. And with the NFL, there was all the reports that have come out about a certain quarterback out there in Cleveland. And then in the NHL, there's been some signings. There's been some moves that we'll discuss in the second hour of this show on the Sports Angle on PR Connections Radio, the voice of new media. Now, here, I have a guest on tonight's show, someone who's very well knowledgeable, someone who knows the world of baseball. And Mike, I appreciate you coming on.
Well, I used to know the world of baseball, but I'm afraid it's changed so much. I'm not sure it's the same world anymore. Now, do I call you Ian or Rocco?
Now, my name is Ian Rickelli. I'm the host of the Sports Angle on PR Connections Radio.
You look somebody I used to know named Rocco Rickelli.
You know what? That name does not ring a bell at all. In fact, I don't recognize that name. So we're going to keep on going, as my name is Ian Rickelli. I'm the host of the Sports Angle on PR Connections Radio. And when it comes to MLB, there is a segment I'm bringing back for this show, and it is buy or sell. And buy or sell is self-explanatory. We're pretty much going to go through a team, and I'm going to ask you, I'm going to ask everyone watching around the world, when it comes to this organization, do you believe that they are good enough to win a World Series? When it comes to buy or sell, do you believe this organization has what it takes to win a World Series in 2022? You ready for it?
I don't think the Cubs have it anymore.
I'm sorry, what?
I don't think the Cubs have it anymore to win a World Series, Mr. Ian.
Look, when it comes to the Cubs, I mean, they're pretty much a certain team now. I mean, they pretty much are exactly that. Now, when it comes to buy or sell, the first person we're immediately going to talk about and the first team we need to discuss is a favorite. Is a team people out here on the West Coast have been wanting to crown a World Series champion since the beginning of the year, and that organization is the LA Dodgers, an organization that here on the West Coast, everyone loves with a fiery passion here in MLB. So I want to ask you, Mike, and I want to ask everyone watching around the world, when it comes to the Los Angeles Dodgers, buy or sell, do you think they could win 2022 World Series?
Well, Ian, you know, I'm most interested in talking about the Yankees, but seeing as how you brought up the Dodgers, which is kind of a tough thing to talk about for a Yankee fan like myself, I'll be glad to talk about them. Now, the Dodgers seem to be the perennial, at least for the last couple of years, favorites to win everything. But what have they won the last couple of years?
Decent amount.
How many World Series did they win the last 3 years? One? They won one? And so how come just 1 out of 3 if they're the perennial favorite, do you think? Why do you think Houston beat them? Or why do you think Washington beat them?
Well, for starters, we all know why Houston beat LA. It's been pretty well documented that the Astros, there's a reason why they beat the LA Dodgers in 2017. 2018, when they went up against the Boston Red Sox had an excellent pitching staff, excellent bullpen. That was the reason why they beat them in 2018. And in 2019, the Washington Nationals, they had the momentum, they had the confidence, and once again, they had a rotation in Washington. The one thing that the LA Dodgers struggled with for a long time was having an elite core, having an elite rotation where you had 4 pitchers and you were not going to get past either one. Understand the LA Dodgers in 2020 went out and got those guys. In 2021, they started promoting those guys from the AAA, from the minors. So you want to ask why the Dodgers lost in 2017, why they lost in 2018. You will want to discuss why the Los Angeles Dodgers have only won one title in the last 5 years. It's because the Los Angeles Dodgers didn't have a pitching staff like they do now. So, Mike, buy or sell the Los Angeles Dodgers as 2022 World Series champions?
Well, right now, that is a sell. Only last 5 years and being there 3 times, winning only one. I say the odds are, if that's 20% or 25%, I don't think they're going to excel and beat that. So I've got to say, sell those blue Dodger uniforms. Pick up some pinstripes.
Well, before we get over to those pinstripes, and we're talking about MLB here on the Sports Angle on PR Connections Radio, the voice of new media. I'm your host, Ian Kelly. We're here with our guest, Mike, from Las Vegas, Nevada. Now, when it comes to a New York team that has it all, when it comes to an MLB team out there in New York who has what it takes to win, we got to talk about the Mets. Oh, it's the Mets, baby. Yes, it's the Mets. The Mets. When it comes to the New York Mets, the team that pretty much took the colors of the New York Giants, the New York Yankees, and the New York Mets and put them all together. When it comes to New York Mets, they had an excellent offseason. They got a lot of young players, 2 of the best pitchers in baseball. But, Mike, is it a buy or sell for the New York Yankees being a 2022 World Series champion? Buy or sell that Steve Cohen and the New York Mets will win a World Series in 2022?
Well, Ian, I've got to be a little serious here with you. I've tried to be a little lighthearted here with the Dodgers being a nemesis of the Yankees. But, if you follow 50-38, 538, and they do a pretty good job. The Dodgers, they have about a 27% chance of winning. And I said, they've won, have a 20% winning percentage in the World Series, maybe 25% over the last 5 years. So that pretty well ties in. So that's a pretty tough thing. Now, you've vacillated a little bit between the Yankees and the Mets, but I'm assuming we're talking about the Mets. Now, they right at this point, Rocco, they've only got an 8% probability of winning. If you believe in statistics, mathematics, and predictions, the Mets are at 8%. Now, you may say, why? They've got a projected season winning of 98 and 64. But I don't think they got the toughness to go through the World Series. Now, Steve Cohen has done amazing with the Mets. He's done amazing. But I'm not sure that amazing is far enough yet. And their coach has actually done really good. Now, I know you did not agree with that coach when he first came on. Did you? You're shaking your head no. No, why are you shaking your head no? You didn't think that coach was going to do good. Why not?
Because Buck Showalter in his entire career has been the guy you pick before you go on to win. Buck Showalter was the guy before Joe Torre with the New York Yankees. He was the guy before the Arizona Diamondbacks won their World Series in 2001. He was the guy before Ron Washington took over the Texas Rangers and went back-to-back World Series. Understand that Buck Showalter, he is the guy you pick before you pick the guy that you're going to win the World Series with. So whoever the New York Mets hire after Buck Showalter, I believe that they could win a World Series. But until then, as long as you have Buck Showalter as your manager, the New York Mets are not going to win a World Series in 2022. I want you to take that to the bank. The New York Mets are not going to win a World Series in 2022. So, Mike, we're going to agree on that. The New York Mets are not winning a World Series this year.
Well, Ian, the reason I would agree with you is because their pitching is too fluid. And they remind me of the Yankees a year or two ago, where the Yankees just had fluid pitching and could not quite anchor on who the pitcher should be. So right now, the Mets remind me of the Yankees over the last couple of years. You think that's a fair assessment, Ian?
I believe that the Mets have a good amount of talent, and I think that the New York Mets have taken the Yankees approach of, if we can't develop them, we're just going to simply buy them. Now, I think the New York Mets, could they win a World Series eventually down the line? Sure. However, I think it's going to be a long time before the New York Mets actually win a World Series out there in Queens. I think it's going to be a while until the New York Mets bring a title home to Queens.
So do you think? So right now, you agree with most of the predictions that the Dodgers are stronger than the Mets?
Right now, the LA Dodgers are the strongest team in the National League. And actually, you can make a good argument that the Los Angeles Dodgers, in terms of rotation, in terms of 26-man roster, are the strongest team in Major League Baseball right now. There is no other organization in Major League Baseball today that has more of a stronger rotation, and there is no MLB organization right now on the planet that has done better at scouting and developing young players than the Los Angeles Dodgers have. People talk about Freddie Freeman and people talk about that all you want, but understand that the Los Angeles Dodgers are where they are because of the talent they have scouted. They are there because of the players they have drafted in the last decade. Los Angeles Dodgers, strongest team in baseball. Absolutely, I agree with the analytics.
Well, you believe they're the strongest team because right now they're only one game ahead of the Mets, and the Yankees are ahead of everybody in the world that you can think of. So I realize that the Dodgers have strong core. I realize they have done better in the last month than they did the first several months. The Yankees have been a little bit weaker the last few weeks than they had been. But right now, the Yankees are the team to beat. I don't believe the Dodgers are. I believe these ranking services are misranking them.
And as we are talking about the buy or sell segment, MLB playoffs here on the Sports Angle on PR Connections Radio, the voice of new media. I'm your host, Ian Kelly. We're here with Mike from Las Vegas, Nevada, talking about MLB. And for all the people watching on YouTube, hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe and share this show with all of your friends and family. We appreciate your support. So we talked about the Dodgers. We opened that up with them. New York Mets, what we talked about recently. And now the last organization that is a favorite, last organization who everyone wants to see win number 28. All right, they are the Montreal Canadiens of baseball. They are the Los Angeles Lakers of baseball. They are the dynasty, the prestige, the pedigree of baseball, the most iconic brand in baseball. And we're talking about the New York Yankees, a 27-time, soon to be 28-time champions. They got to win a title at some point. So when it comes to New York Yankees, and I know that you have an attachment to them, they're close to your heart. When it comes to New York Yankees, I think that they're good enough to make a World Series, but make an argument to me as to why they will win or why they won't win a championship in 2022. Buy or sell, New York Yankees.
Well, Ian, let me first go back and say I'm renting out the Dodgers and I'm renting out the Mets. I think they're rentals for somebody who wants to have a future maybe. But right now, I think they're rentals. I don't think they're sales. I think they're rentals. I think right now the only team I would sell would be the Cubs, but that's not here nor there. Let's go back to the Yankees. The Yankees right now to me are the buy, not because I'm a Yankee fan, but yes, they are because I'm a Yankee fan. But they have overcome their shortfalls the last few years. They seem to have gelled and it seems to have come together this year. They made enough trades. In fact, the reason I keep bringing up the Cubs, and it's a little bit to push you a little bit, Ian, but they seem to be the Cubs reincarnated a little bit. Now, I hate to say that, but they sure seem to have a lot of ex-Cub players there, and they're doing fairly well. And then you take Judge, who is just fantastic this year, and their pitching has solidified, and it's not as fluid as it has been. So right now, based upon the fact that they brought a lot of expertise from the Cubs, they have solidified their pitching. Judge is a star of stars this year and a few other things. And they got rid of some weak people last year. Their catcher, who they relied on way too much, is gone. And they counted too much on him. And they solidified their first base position. It looks like they've solidified their third base position a little better. So I've got to say right now, from all facts and factors and not emotions and favorite teams, the Yankees have got to be the buy right now.
I mean, if we're going to continue with the New York Yankees, considering you are a fan of the team, considering you watch the Yankees more than I ever have, when it comes to New York Yankees, here's a two-parter for you. Do you believe Aaron Judge will win AL MVP? And he is projected to maybe get to the 60 home run total, which has not been done in a long time. It's been about 2 decades since 60 home runs has been hit in Major League Baseball. This two-part question is, do you think he'll win AL MVP? And do you believe Aaron Judge can get to 60 home runs, which has not been done since the early 2000s? Mike from Las Vegas, Nevada, who do you got?
Well, first, we're past the All-Star game, so you can actually make some projections right now. Aaron Judge is definitely on track to be the MVP. If he falters, he will still be on track to be the MVP, in my perspective, because even if he falters a little bit, he will not fall off that significantly to lose that. So, yes, I think Aaron Judge is definitely the MVP candidate. Now, on the other part, I believe the Yankees can hold it together. What do you think, Ian? I mean, you're the host. What do you think about both topics?
Honestly, it really depends. It really depends on what they have. That's really all that's going to matter, is that when it comes to that organization, it just really depends on what they can do as an organization. I mean, when it comes to Aaron Judge, yeah, him being AL MVP sounds fine. But when you compare who he's going to go up against in order to win that MVP, when you understand that Shohei Ohtani is the odds-on favorite right now to win AL MVP, win back-to-back AL MVPs. Also got to give a lot of respect to Jose Ramirez right now. He has been clutch for the Cleveland Guardians as they're trying to make their push right now. So you have Aaron Judge, you have Shohei Ohtani, you have Jose Ramirez, and yes, I'm not going to forget about the NL side as well. You have Paul Goldschmidt, you have Freddie Freeman, and you have Austin Riley. Those are the guys over there on the National League side. But when it comes to the MVP conversation and what we are talking about right now, there is really only 2 people that I can really think of that should get that award. And I'm going to say unbiasedly that when it comes to Jose Ramirez, I am a huge fan of what he's done in Cleveland. I like his hitting. I like his consistency. He's a clutch hitter. So I'm going to say to you is that Aaron Judge, if he wins MVP, I'm not going to be upset with it. But I think Jose Ramirez could definitely earn it. And I think Shohei Ohtani is probably going to be a close second on that list. Aaron Judge maybe third. But that's who I got right now.
If I was a voter, and I think this is what the voters should do, they should look at what these players did to bring their team to the next level. And Ohtani is great. Don't get me wrong. I think he's one of the best players that have come along in a long time. And I love his attitude, and I love the way he plays the game, and I love his star quality. But is he going to bring LA to the pinnacle of going to the World Series? No, not going to happen. How about Ramirez? Is he going to bring his team better, bring him to the star quality, bring him close to the World Series, even bring him into the playoffs? Is Ohtani going to bring his team into the playoffs? Are they going to be playing for the league championship? I don't think so. And I think that will be the thing to differentiate for Judge, is he could bring his team to the American League Championship. And to me, that is the difference, Ian.
What Mike Trout showed MLB, when Mike Trout won all of his MVP awards, and Mike, I want everyone around the world to listen to this as well. When Mike Trout won 3 MVPs despite not making the playoffs once during that time span, it really shows you that the MVP does not equal success in the postseason. You don't even have to make the postseason in order to win an MVP. Shohei Ohtani last year won MVP, and he did not make the playoffs. So when you're really basing it off of that argument, I get what you're saying. And on paper, it should be that way. But because the fact that Trout and Ohtani and all these players have won MVP despite not making the playoffs during that time period, I'm going to say that Jose Ramirez, he would be my vote at this moment. Shohei Ohtani would be second. Heck, even Yordan Alvarez, I got to give him a little bit of credit too. He's been the main star in Houston. So Alvarez, Judge, Ramirez, Ohtani. Your vote would be Aaron Judge because of what he's doing with the Yankees. I got Jose Ramirez because of what he's doing out there in Cleveland. But the second part of that question was, with Aaron Judge, do I think he could get to 60 home runs? Do I think it's a possibility that Aaron Judge will get to that level? And I'm going to say no. I don't think Aaron is going to get to 60 home runs, and I'm going to explain why. I will explain why I don't think he's going to hit 20 home runs over the next 2 months. Because the next 60 games of the year, that's when the wear and tear kicks in. Those next 20 games is when all of that wear and tear on your body is going to take over. It's where all the pains and all the aches, that is going to kick in. When it comes to Aaron Judge, let's also consider the fact that he hasn't played a full season really in his entire career. Aaron Judge has been plagued by injuries, and that actually was his biggest weakness heading into 2022. You're a Yankees fan. You know that better than anyone else. When it comes to Aaron Judge, yes, he is a great athlete, but unfortunately, he has never really been able to stay healthy for an entire 162 games of his career. And that's the main reason why, Mike, and everyone watching around the world, when it comes to Aaron Judge, I don't think he's going to hit 20 more home runs. I don't think he's going to be able to do it because the most games he's ever played in his entire career was 155. He hit 52 home runs, and that was the year that he broke out as a superstar. So I will say to you, Mike, and everyone watching around the world, when it comes to Aaron Judge, it's a feel-good story. I think it's really awesome, but I don't think that he'll get to 60 home runs, and I also don't think he's going to win AL MVP based off of the fact that he's not going to be able to stay healthy, and he's most likely not going to be able to keep up the pace that he has done for the next 2 months.
Well, let me throw out a couple facts for you, Ian, even because I know you like statistics a little bit. The Yankees have played a little over 80 games, right?
They have played 100 at this point.
Yeah. And how many? And Judge has how many home runs?
He has hit 40. He just hit 40.
So he hit 40, and they're at a little over 80 games. They just not close to 100.
Right now,
one home run every 2 games, let's say, or every 2.5 games.
Right now, they have 60 games left in the year. To answer your question, they are at the 100 game mark.
So he has 40 home runs. All right. So that's 1 home run every 2.5 games. So if he hits 1 home run every 2.5, you divide 60 by that, you get 25 more home runs. Statistically, he's on target for that. He should be able to get to 65 home runs statistically. Now, let's say that he gets a little bumps and bruises and he hurts a little bit and the pitching gets a little tougher, but the pitchers also get tired too, Ian, not just the batters, the pitchers. So the pitching this time of the year tends to struggle a little more because they're tired too. So I would say if he's tired, they're tired. Will he make a whole year? Nobody knows. Will he get hurt? Nobody knows. But statistically, he's on target to get close to 60 to 65. He should be in that range. Physically, the pitchers get tired too. So debatably, from my view, he should get to 60 to 65. He's on target for that. I see no reason he can't do it. If you've watched him lately, he's still hitting the ball exquisitely and extremely well, and his stride and his swing are still as good as they were at the first of the year. And I hear the softies talk nowadays about, oh, these guys can't do it. Look at, they're going to get hurt. Look at how much they get hurt. Shoot, in some of my favorite players were Roger Maris, Mickey Mantle, Yogi Berra. And some of those guys, even Sandy Koufax of the Dodgers, I liked. These guys played hurt and they succeeded. Aaron Judge, if he gets hurt, if he really wants to get there, he will play hurt and he will get there. He's on stride right now. There's nothing statistically that says he can't do it. If he gets to 60 or 65, the Yankees go into the playoffs, go into the American League Finals. There's no reason there Judge won't be MVP because the voters have got to take that into consideration. They may have given it away. Players who did their teams to get into the World Series because they were star, and they were star because there was nobody else starring. And I'm not trying to take anything away from anybody that has won it because achievement, and I couldn't do it, and anybody can do it, and I applaud them. But I think they've got to give him credit for the home run pace. I think they got to give him credit for what the Yankees have turned around, and he looks good. So I see no reason he can't get it. I'm going to have to agree on this. I think he's on target for 60 to 65. I think he'll play hurt if he has to, and I think that will get him the MVP.
So talking about MLB buy or sell playoffs here on the Sports Angle on PR Connections Radio, the voice of new media. I'm your host, Ian Kelly. We're here with Mike from Las Vegas, Nevada. And we've talked about the Dodgers, the Mets, the Yankees. I have the Dodgers being your 2022 World Series champions. You have the New York Yankees being 2022 World Series champions. But we're going to do something a little different in this next segment, Mike. Everyone watching around the world. Instead of doing buy or sell about the World Series, we're going to do simply buy or sell playoffs, okay? I'm going to give you a team, Mike, and you're going to tell me if you buy or sell, are they going to make the playoffs in 2022? Do you think that they are going to be one of the 14 teams that represents MLB in the playoffs? Do you think that's a great idea?
Well, first of all, before you go there, I would like to know why you're not talking about your hometown team, the place you were born, the Houston Astros. Now, I agree they're not apparently signaling plays anymore. They're not cheating. But why aren't we talking about the Astros? Do you think it's because they're a sell already? You already pre-concluded that, Ian?
Well, to me, they're not really a sell. They're foreclosure. I pretty much put them in bankruptcy. I mean, when it comes to New York Yankees, they are the top dog in the American League. Yeah, I did the Dodgers versus the Mets because they are technically neck and neck. But there is no other organization right now in Major League Baseball, in the American League, that has done what the Yankees have done this year. There is no organization that has had the consistency and has had the momentum that the New York Yankees have had. So it pretty much is the New York Yankees and everybody else is right below them. So that's why I didn't talk about the Astros. To me, the Astros are not even going to win the AL. I don't see them happening. It's pretty much a situation where it is the Yankees to lose, not the Astros to win.
Now that I can take that assessment, but let me mention to you, the Astros have handled the Mets, have handled the Yankees pretty well. I hate to admit that, but they've done a pretty good job. And how well have they handled the Dodgers?
There is a big difference between a regular season in June and the postseason in October. The atmosphere is different. The energy is different. The stakes are different. So you could talk about regular season series. You could talk about the series sweep and everything like that. You can go ahead, Vegas Mike, and everyone around the world who's watching. But if you want to make that argument, just remember that when it comes to postseason, the stakes are a lot higher. So they're going to play it differently than they do in May. Understand the pitching is going to be used differently in October versus when they do in May. Their bats are going to be taken in and out of the lineup more differently in October versus in May. So yes, Mike, if you want to use that argument, go right ahead. But when it comes to the Astros, I don't see them being a threat to the New York Yankees because I understand that it's the New York Yankees. They are the most dominant team in the American League right now. They're going to be the team that represents them in the American League for 2022, but they're going to lose to the Los Angeles Dodgers in the 2022 World Series. It's going to be LA versus New York. It's going to be Manhattan going up against Los Angeles. And honestly, it's going to be a great World Series to watch. It's going to be a one that steals the show, but that is what's going to happen, Mike.
You don't think the Braves are going to steal it again? Or come close to steal, not again, but you don't think the Braves can steal it from the Dodgers?
The Braves are a good team, and we actually weren't going to talk about them because it's pretty much we know that they're going to make it. But when it comes to the Atlanta Braves, they've lost too much talent on the back end. Losing Freddie Freeman was a huge loss for them. Losing guys like Jorge Soler went to Miami. There is all this talent that left the Atlanta Braves. Jock Peterson, for example, he went to San Francisco. So because of the talent that the Atlanta Braves lost, I don't see them being on the same level as the Los Angeles Dodgers. So that is the answer to your question, Mike.
Now, we're in agreement on the Yankees being in the World Series. We're in agreement that the Astros probably aren't going to make it, even though they've been strong. We're in agreement that the Mets, I call them a rental. I guess you call them a sell. I think the Braves are going to peak and then peter out a little bit. So I would agree with you, even though I think for personal reasons that I would always have the Dodgers as a rental, that they will be in the World Series. The two best World Series would either be the Yankees and the Dodgers or the Yankees and the Mets. I would love to see both of them. Either one of them be exciting. Either one of them would bring in a lot of money. But remember, when the Dodgers have faced the Yankees have tended to prevail. So let's go with the Yankees and the Dodgers. I'm with you on that.
Well, you also got to understand the last time the Yankees and the Dodgers faced off in the World Series, I wasn't even born yet. So when it comes to the Dodgers and when it comes to the Yankees, it'll be a fantastic World Series, but I have the Dodgers winning that one. I have the Dodgers winning their second World Series title the last 3 years, and I can see the Dodgers becoming somewhat of a dynasty, just like the Golden State Warriors have become a dynasty in the NBA, just like the Patriots became a dynasty in the NFL. Because all it takes is to win 2 out of 3, win 3 out of 5 for you to really be established as a dynasty in sports. Now, what I was going to talk about with buy or sell MLB playoff edition. Now, this team they have some of the best young talent.
I don't disagree. The Yankees and the Dodgers or the Yankees and the Mets, but I don't see Toronto being there, just like I don't see the Brewers being there either.
So to repeat what you were saying, we had a little bit of technical difficulties, unfortunately. But just to repeat what you were saying about the Toronto Blue Jays, yeah, I don't think that they're going to be a huge contender to win the World Series, but to be a playoff team, you think that might be 100%? They were going to see Canada be in the MLB playoff?
I think there's an 80% plus probability they'll be in the playoffs, but I think there's less than a 10% chance they'll be in the World Series.
Now, as we are talking about MLB here on the Sports Angle on PR Connections Radio, the voice of new media, I'm your host, Ian Kelly. And sorry about the camera. For some reason, the camera is all the way panned over here. But when it comes to the MLB playoffs and what we're talking about right now, the next organization that we really need to discuss here on the Sports Angle on PR Connections, you actually mentioned them briefly, is the Milwaukee Brewers. Because the Milwaukee Brewers, they're in the NL Central right now. But I have to ask you and everyone watching around the world, when it comes to Milwaukee, how confident are you that Milwaukee is actually going to make any impact in 2022? How confident are you, Mike, that the Milwaukee Brewers are going to do anything at all for 2022 when it comes playoff time?
They have a good chance of being in the playoffs. There's no doubt about that. I think they can make the playoffs, but I don't think they can make it all the way. They just don't have enough consistency and strength to do that.
All right. So what you are saying is that they will make the playoffs, but they will probably be a first round exit.
Depends on who they play. I don't know who they're going to play. If they play the Minnesota Twins, they won't be. If they play the Yankees, they will be a first round. So it's hard to tell. It just depends on who they play. But can I go back and ask a question? Because you're so adamant on the Dodgers winning the World Series. What do you think? Would you give them the over and under? Would you give them the upright? Would you take them in a straight bet? Would you take them with odds against them? How would you take the Dodgers? Would you take them in any venue? Would you take them, as a 3-2 odds? Would you take them straight up? Would you take them in any case?
So I'm taking the Los Angeles Dodgers to be your 2022 World Series champion, regardless of what it is. Straight up, I'm taking the 2022 Los Angeles Dodgers. When it comes to 3-2 odds, I'm taking the Los Angeles Dodgers. You're talking about a wager? Absolutely. I'm taking the Los Angeles Dodgers. When it comes to the 2022 MLB World Series, Mike, and everyone watching around the world, I am very confident that the Los Angeles Dodgers are going to be your 2022 MLB champions. I believe in my heart, and honestly, I believe on paper as well, when it comes to the Los Angeles Dodgers, they are not just the safest bet, but they are the bet you need to make for the 2022 World Series. There's no organization that has as much depth and has much talent as the Dodgers do.
On the straight up, we can debate that, and you'll take the Dodgers, I'll take the Yankees. But on a point spread or on a spread, I would be really careful on that, because they're not going to, if the Dodgers win or the Yankees win, they're not going to blow each other out. It's going to be really close. I could see a 4-3 series. That I would not doubt it. So I'd be really careful on the point spread to be that conclusive that you're going to take the same team on both. That seems to be quite a big bet. Now, I hope you're not. Are you advising your viewers to take that bet too on a point spread?
So here's the thing. I don't tell anybody to go out to the casino and bet $30,000 on a team. I'm not that type of guy. I never have been. I never will be. When it comes to betting, you make your own decision. You make your own conclusion. What I'm pointing out is that when it comes to pure talent, 26-man roster from top to bottom, there is no organization that is like the Los Angeles Dodgers. There is no organization who has 4 starting pitchers who are as elite as the Los Angeles Dodgers. There's no organization that has a 8-man starting lineup that can rake after rake after rake. There is really no starting lineup that has as many home run hitters and as many contact hitters as the Los Angeles Dodgers do. So, because of all the talent the Los Angeles Dodgers have, I would be very confident in the Los Angeles Dodgers winning a World Series. And hey, Mike, you mentioned the New York Yankees going to 7 games. That'd be fantastic for MLB. It would be fantastic for MLB to have a 7-game World Series versus the 2 biggest markets in North America. It would be a fantastic opportunity to have a 7-game World Series between 2 of the biggest franchises in baseball history. I like your thinking.
Can the host ask a guest? Can the guest ask a host a question?
You've been pretty much doing it this entire show, but go ahead.
Well, I want to be polite. Who's going to have the worst record? Oakland or Cincinnati?
It is going to be the Oakland Athletics, the soon-to-be Las Vegas Athletics. They are going to have the worst record in all of baseball. Now, I will explain to you why I am very confident and why I believe truly your Oakland Athletics are going to have the worst record in baseball. For starters, they have little to no pitching. Understand that this organization, once they trade Frankie Montas, once they trade any amount of talent they have left at the trade deadline, they're going to have a very bare pitching staff. Understand that their bullpen has been shredded. They really do not have much in terms of talent on their bullpen. And when it comes to their starting lineup, despite the fact that they have sent multiple players down to the minors and then brought them right back up for little to no reason, when it comes to Oakland, it is clear and obvious that their starting lineup is one of the bottom 3 in all of baseball. They really don't have that many contact hitters. They only have 1 power hitter in their entire starting lineup. And when you consider the Oakland Athletics and their division that they are in, Seattle, Houston, and the rest of the American League, Oakland, I have them being the worst record in Major League Baseball. They could easily lose over 100 games because of how bad their organization has been. And look, Mike, and everyone watching around the world, when it comes to Oakland, I do not feel sorry. I do not have any sympathy. I have no empathy for the Oakland Athletics. Understand that the Fisher family, hey, you did this to yourself. You cut your payroll by 60%. You traded 4 all-stars away. I do not feel bad for you.
You want to know something? I mentioned the Reds, but I actually think there's a dark horse for the worst team, and that's the Nationals. How do you use the word ugly without being cynical? They look terrible. I mean, they look worse than Oakland. We know Oakland's traded away all their players, but the Nationals look just plain bad.
And when they trade away Juan Soto at the MLB Trade Deadline, the Nationals are even going to be way worse than what they are now. And speaking of that, the next team that we're actually going to mention about the buy or sell when it comes to MLB playoffs, they have actually been in discussion to get a Juan Soto. There's been a lot of talk about them, and that is the St. Louis Cardinals. I mean, St. Louis Cardinals getting a Juan Soto would be an incredible deal. However, we've heard about the Dodgers, we've heard about the Yankees and the Mets. So I want to ask everyone watching around the world, especially everyone on our YouTube channel, like, share, and subscribe if you can. But Mike and everyone watching around the world, A, do you think the St. Louis Cardinals are going to be a contender for the playoffs in 2022? And secondly, do you think the St. Louis Cardinals are in that sweepstakes to get Juan Soto, the superstar from Washington?
Well, I think the Cardinals are the last team to be in contention to go into the playoffs. I think they're the bottom team, the bottom contending teams to go in. So they got Soto. Would it help them? It would help them, but it isn't going to help them go very far in the playoffs because they are the last team that I would have picked to go in.
And I'm also looking at the chat here and everyone watching around the world, and I do appreciate everyone's feedback. You also have great coverage of MLB. Ian, the Brewers deserve better. Absolutely, the Brewers deserve better. Best team in the NL Central, and most people consider them a punchline. But back to what we were talking about here with Mike from Las Vegas, Nevada, huge baseball fan, analyst, I'm going to say there. When it comes to the St. Louis Cardinals, I heard about the Juan Soto, but let's go one step more. When it comes to Juan Soto, do you believe he's even going to get traded by this Sunday, or do you believe he's going to be stuck in Washington for another miserable 2 seasons?
Depends on how much money he's willing to finally go for now. On the trades, they say, well, the players don't have any choice, et cetera, but they do. They throw in their 2 cents. And so people will know because they don't want to pick up some guy who wants to leave, at the end of the year. That's, you generally don't like to trade and then sell. So I don't know. It just depends, Ian. It's a hard one. It just depends on the terms. Are they willing to sign him for a long term? Are they willing to make him a real high paid player? If they are, he would probably go. If it's trade and sell next year, probably not.
So with you being a Yankees fan, continuing with Juan Soto just for one more second, you being a New York Yankees fan, if it was announced tomorrow, the New York Yankees have traded Anthony Volpe, Jason Dominguez, they have traded pretty much their top 4 prospects with the New York Yankees, have sent them to the Washington Nationals to get a $450 million superstar in Juan Soto. With you being a Yankees fan, do you think that would be the best move moving forward? Do you believe that is what would get them over the hump to get number 28 as a New York Yankees fan? What do you think, Mike?
Well, how would you see, to answer your question, how do you see Juan Soto fitting in as a Yankee? Because I'm not sure he's a clean fit. When I say a clean fit, I mean a fit that is recognizable and fits right in and says, whoa, man, I'm going to make this team better. I actually see him maybe being a little controversial there and making conflict with the team because right now the Yankees are pretty well set, Ian. Remember, they're pretty well structured. Their hitting lineup's pretty good. They've got a bunch of those old Cubs pretty much in the lineup. They're clicking pretty good. You don't want to disrupt that. It's like a well-oiled machine running. You don't want to throw a wrench in there, and I'm not so sure Soto wouldn't do that.
But the Yankees do have a hole in the outfield. I mean, it has been pretty well established that Joey Gallo is a true outcome hitter. Joey Gallo, and I know he's from Nevada, so I'm going to get a lot of hate for this, but you know what? Whatever. When it comes to Joey Gallo, he is a true outcome hitter. Joey Gallo is either going to hit a home run, line out to short, or is going to be a strikeout. Understand that with Joey Gallo, it really isn't a contact hitter. I did not think the Yankees made a good move when they traded for him last trade deadline, and I actually was confirmed to be 100% correct on my assumption because Joey Gallo really hasn't succeeded as a New York Yankee. I mean, Mike, you've seen Joey Gallo every single night as a Yankees fan at 179 batting average. I mean, he's the worst in the entire lineup. So if you could get a Juan Soto, who's one of the top 5 hitters in Major League Baseball, one of the best contact hitters in the game today, I believe that would be an excellent decision. But Mike, I want to ask you, I think the Washington Nationals getting 4 top prospects in exchange for Juan Soto would be the bare minimum for him. Mike, what do you think?
Well, I would see Juan Soto not being a good fit. You may say he's a good hitter and he's a great player. Don't take me wrong. I'm not putting down his playing skills. I'm not putting down his hitting skills, and I'm not saying he's better than Joey Gallo. And if Joey Gallo's up to the 170s, I'm shocked he was in the 160s when I looked the other day. So he's actually improved 10 or 15 points. That's actually pretty good. Maybe they ought to keep him. So would Juan Soto be better than Joey Gallo? Of course he would. But there's still got to be a fit. And right now, the Yankees are functioning very well. It's past midseason. How much do you want to disrupt them? How much do you want to change the makeup? Where does he bat? What do you do with the guys who are hitting in 3, 4, and 5? It seems easy to say bring in the best, but they've got to fit. And I don't think at this time in the season he would be a good fit for the Yankees. He may be a good fit someplace else. Again, maybe it's St. Louis. Maybe it's a team that's one of the lower contenders, but he's not a fit in the Yankees. They're well-oiled. I don't think they want to disrupt that much. I really don't. I would be shocked. Why wouldn't you say, why don't you send him to the Dodgers? That's like saying send him to the Dodgers. Dodgers, or why not disrupt the Dodgers? Because when these teams tend to be functioning reasonably well, they seem to be well-oiled. They play good every night. It's really hard to disrupt. And I would say he's a great player, just like Ohtani, but I think it would be disruptive to the Yankees machine right now.
Well, it's funny you mentioned the Dodgers because Cody Bellinger has really taken a step back as a player. Most Dodgers fans would love to get Juan Soto or team up with Mookie Betts. I mean, are you kidding me? As a baseball fan, Mookie Betts and Juan Soto in the same outfield, Aaron Judge and Juan Soto in the same outfield. Oh my goodness. That would be an absolute beauty out there in MLB. Now, we were doing the MLB playoff segment, talking about buy or sell here on the Sports Angle on PRConnectionsRadio.com, the voice of new media. I'm your host, Ian Kelly. We're here with Mike from Las Vegas, Nevada. Now, I understand that this team is leading their division, a very weak division, honestly one of the worst divisions in all of baseball, but they somehow have to win it. But the Minnesota Twins, the Yankees punching bag, the organization that always loses to New York when it matters the most. Vegas, Mike, do you see Minnesota doing anything remotely close this playoffs, this postseason? Or will the Minnesota Twins just be a team that gets fed to New York this playoff?
There'll be another team like the Cardinals. There'll be another team like the Mariners. They can make the playoffs, but they aren't going anyplace in the playoffs. They really aren't. They're not that strong. And they're not that dynamic. You've got to be strong in both pitching and hitting. And you can't lack in one. The Yankees were the perfect example again the last 3 years. They were strong in hitting, but they were weak in pitching. And you got to be strong in both to get there. And the only team that besides the Yankees is the Dodgers. I really believe that. So, and the Mets are contenders, but their pitching, it tends to be a little too fluid. So they need to add one more pitcher there. So I think right now those teams we just talked about are not going to be there.
And one last team that we have to mention, mainly because of how good they were supposed to be. And I have a rant. I really need to talk about them for a second, so we have to discuss them. But Mike and everyone watching around the world, I need to know about the Chicago White Sox. The Chicago White Sox, one game below 500, but the American League can turn on a dime. With them having 7 teams in the playoffs, I want to know from everyone watching around the world, Chicago White Sox, do you see them being a playoff team? Do you see them being a contender in 2022? Or will the Chicago White Sox flame and burn out? And hopefully, for their sake and their sanity, they fire Tony La Russa, the guy who stuck in 1982. Hopefully, they fire Tony La Russa as their manager. But Mike, everyone watching around the world, what do you think about the Chicago White Sox? Do you believe they will be a playoff team in 2022?
Listen, I see the White Sox, the Phillies, the Rays, the Twins, the Mariners, the Cardinals, maybe even the Cleveland Guardians, the team you like, and maybe even the Red Sox and the Giants being all middle 80 game winners. There's going to be a big clump there of about 10 teams. So one game is going to make it either way. So I think there's a clump there of about 10 teams, and one game, one way or the other, is going to make them get in or get out. But I don't think they're going to star and go on, just like I don't think the Twins are. I don't think the Rays are. So I don't think the White Sox have got it. Now, maybe they will get Ron Soto.
I don't see that happening just because of the fact that they really have nothing to appeal with Juan Soto. Same with the Cubs. The Cubs are not going to get Juan Soto. They have nothing to appeal for Juan Soto. Juan Soto wants to win, and he wants to make money. Once again, Juan Soto wants to win, and he wants to make money. So, and we're getting towards the end of our MLB segment here on the Sports Angle on PR Connections Radio. It's almost been an hour, by the way, which is insane how quick time goes. But when it comes to our MLB segment, the MLB Trade Deadline, we were discussing that. And with the New York Yankees, they made a move recently. But, Mike, do you believe the New York Yankees are going to make one more move? Do you see a possibility the New York Yankees, your favorite team, could maybe reach out to the Chicago Cubs and get an Ian Happ to help their outfield? Maybe they'll call up the Chicago Cubs and get a catcher, an all-star catcher, and Wilson Contreras to be their backstop. I think that might be a possibility, Mike. The New York Yankees call up the Chicago Cubs, who are trading everybody and the dog this offseason.
Now, those, Ian, are good ideas for tweaking. I think they're a much better idea than Soto. I just believe that with the Yankees payroll, excuse me, and the commitments they have with the big payrolls, and I think with Judge coming up for salary next year, Juan Soto just is not going to be a fit because they're going to want to keep Judge and they got to pay Judge. So I'm going to go back and say Soto just is not a fit for them. But I think those two players you just brought up would be great. Now, that would make 8 of the 10 starting players. And I say 10 because of the rotation and that they've got. But I would say that would make the Yankees look like the Cubs. And we know the Cubs won the World Series. So if we know the Cubs won the World Series, they should be odds-on favorite in your view to beat the Dodgers. I don't get it. They're the Cubs reincarnated, Ian. So I'm going to go back. Give it to those Yankees, especially if they get one more Cub. They're in. They're the World Series winners.
We'll never forget, Mike, the Los Angeles Dodgers beat the Chicago Cubs in their prime in 2017 to get to the World Series. As somebody who was a Cubs fan and somebody who was at a Los Angeles Dodgers radio station in 2017, it was one of the most difficult jobs I ever worked because you have all these Dodgers fans cheering and celebrating, and here I am as a Cubs fan, livid because I couldn't discuss it. So just trust me. The 2017 Dodgers beat the Cubs, and they had Rizzo, they had Contreras, they had Happ, they had Bryant. If the 2017 Dodgers could beat the 2016 Cubs, I think the 2022 Dodgers could beat the 2016 Cubs. So I will say to you is that, yeah, they get Contreras and they get Happ. That will be now 8 former Cubs that are on the New York Yankees organization. But that doesn't mean they're going to have 2016 be repeated. It's not going to happen.
The Cubs didn't have Judge, who's going to hit 60 to 65 home runs, and some other players. So let me repeat again. The Cubs could repeat in the World Series in 2022 with pinstripes on.
Now, I understand your argument, Mike, but Aaron Judge wasn't on the Cubs. But hey, they had this guy named Kyle Schwarber, who, by the way, is second in home runs right behind Aaron Judge right now. You also got to remember the Cubs back in 2016 had very established veterans in their organization, like a Ben Zobrist. They had veterans on their team, like a Dexter Fowler, who was a guy who who led in the leadoff spot. So they didn't necessarily have an Aaron Judge, but the Yankees really do not have any established veterans that have that leadership quality like a Ben Zobrist and like a Dexter Fowler did back in 2016. So I respectfully disagree. However, when it comes to New York Yankees, they are going to lose in the 2016 World Series because they're going to lose to the Los Angeles Dodgers, the 2022 World Series champions, a team that could have won in 2016 but lost to the Cubs in the NLCS. I have them winning the 2022 World Series. I have them being the New York Yankees. That is my prediction.
This is always a fun debate, but I would point you to the direction that now all those Cubs are very seasoned veterans that are playing for the Yankees. So I want you to remember that first baseman for the Yankees now is a seasoned, very mature baseball player. The Cubs to have and is now on the Yankees. But I know I'm sure you want to get on to another segment. So whatever you say, but we're going to debate. We're going to see at the end of the year who was right.
You know, the fact that you have to bring up the former captain of the Chicago Cubs, the guy who was the absolute legend in Chicago. I mean, he will get free beers for the rest of his life in Chicago because of what he did for the Cubs organization. But yes, we are going to move on to the next topic. And the Las Vegas Aviators, the organization that is 5 games above 500, they're going to be taking on the Reno Aces in an upcoming series. You're going to have the Battle of Nevada, the in-state rivalry with the Aces and the Aviators. The Sports Angle on PR Connections Radio will be at one of those games. It's going to be a fantastic experience. I already have that lined up and in the works. But the Las Vegas Aviators, we're going to be there. Sports Angle on PRConnectionsRadio.com, the voice of new media. But an interesting idea popped in my head. And Vegas, Mike, I need you and everyone around the world to engage in this. The Oakland Athletics are absolutely terrible. Oakland has been one of the worst teams in baseball. They're going to lose 100-plus games. And most people have been referring to them as the Oakland AAAs. All right? They've been referred to as the Oakland AAAs. But the Las Vegas Aviators are the AAA team of the Oakland AAAs. So, do you think the Oakland Athletics would lose to the Las Vegas Aviators? Would the Oakland AAAs lose to their AAA team?
Are you suggesting that the Las Vegas Aviators are the AA team of the Oakland Athletics? Are you suggesting that they're both AAA teams? How would you describe that to me if you had an opportunity?
I would say that the Oakland AAAs are the AAA affiliate of the Oakland Athletics. And I say at the Las Vegas Aviators, if you've watched them at all this season, you would know that they have been one of the best teams in all of AAA. It's an organization that really shows more heart and shows more hustle than their actual MLB counterpart has been. So my argument to you would be if you took the AAA affiliate and you put them in MLB, you took the MLB team and put them in AAA, I don't think that we would see as much of a big difference in terms of win-loss record when you see what the Oakland Athletics have done this year and you see what the Las Vegas Aviators have done this year. I do not see much of a difference, and I honestly couldn't see much of a difference when you have the Las Vegas Aviators and how well they've done and the Oakland Athletics and how bad they have been. That's my angle. Mike, what you guys say?
I think it's an interesting question. I think it's a perplexing question. And I think that the Aviators would give the AAA Oakland team a run for their money because of this idea that you planted. And that is they would be more energetic, more enthusiastic. But then again, you got the Oakland Athletics. They wouldn't want to lose to the AAA team. So probably in the end, the Oakland AAAs would probably beat the Aviators just because of the embarrassment factor. But I think the Aviators would give them a heck of a 5, 7 game, 3 game, whatever it is, series. And so the longer the series, I think the more apt is that the Oakland AAAs would win. The shorter the series, if it was a 3-game series, I think the Aviators might surprise you. So a short series, it would be a whoever flip a coin. Long series, I think it would be the Oakland AAAs because they just would be too embarrassed to lose.
And here's where we're going to respectfully disagree. I say if you did a 5-game series, the Las Vegas Aviators, they would win over the Oakland Athletics. You did a 5-game series because of all the young talent, because of how energetic and how hungry the AAA team would be, and based off of how pitiful the MLB team has been this year. I would say that in a 5-game series, I say 3 games, 2, the Las Vegas Aviators would beat the Oakland Athletics and would embarrass the MLB team that has a $45 million payroll, losing the guys who are only making $20,000 for the entire year.
Wow, I think you ought to send that challenge out there on the internet, and I think you ought to send it to the owner of Oakland and tell him before he decides to send his team to Las Vegas, he probably needs to face the Las Vegas team because he may not need to move them all. He maybe can just dump them all there, according to you, and just say, hey, the guys in Las Vegas are going to play. I'm going to save $1 million in moving costs. I think that's a great idea. So you ought to send that idea to him. I think you could save him a lot of money when they relocate here, which I know you're looking forward to.
If the Fisher family found out who I was, if the Fisher family even knew that Ian Rakelli existed, I would probably be on a first-way trip to Band City, okay? If the Oakland Athletics and the Fisher family understood who I was, they would probably block me on every single social media. They would probably take away every media credential request I have because it is no secret, ladies and gentlemen, that I do not like the Fisher family for what they have done to Oakland. I'm not a big fan of what they have done. So, hey, if they took any of my advice, I would be shocked, Mike, because I am not very shy about my opinion on the Oakland Athletics. Now, we have one more segment left to go on our MLB here on the Sports Angle on PR Connections Radio, the voice of new media. I'm your host, Ian Rakelli. We're here with Mike from Las Vegas, Nevada. And it is automated strike zone for 2023. It has been a hot topic. It has been a big debate in the baseball world. And Mike, I know you have a very big opinion on it. I know that you have a lot to say about the automated strike zone for 2023. Your angle coming up in just a second. But I want to know from all the people watching around the world as well, what do you believe about the automated strike zone? Are you for it? Are you against it? Are you meh? Let us know on social media at Sports Angle on PR, and go to our YouTube channel, like, follow, share, subscribe, hit that like button, turn on notification bell, help us out a lot. But Vegas, Mike, when it comes to the automated strike zone next year in MLB, are you for it? Are you against it? Let's hear your angle.
Well, first of all, you're talking about a deep dive into a deep topic. So let's start at the higher level, at the 50,000-foot view before we move into the trees. You and I have been to games, and we've watched that work in the AAA. And my opinion was it actually worked quite good. I did not see a lot of disputes. I saw much less hollering, screaming, stuttering, bat throwing, pitching, throwing at the hitters. So I think it actually has worked quite well. And I've watched the umpires use it, and they seem to be pretty comfortable with it. I don't think I saw too many disputes or anything. So actually, surprising to me, it seems to work pretty good. And I'm rather pleased with that. But there's a bigger topic. Then does automated pitching strike zone work? Is it better? They've done it on TV for a long time. You watch a baseball on a TV, and what do you see? You see that little box up there, and you see them saying it's in, it's out. So I think people seeing it, if they haven't seen it live, they need to see it because it's not much different than watching it on TV. So if you haven't seen it, don't criticize it yet because it actually works quite well. And yes, it destroys the game for us old timers. It destroys, everything in the game, but so has the pinch hitter. So is, putting a guy on second in extra innings. So is, making the relief pitcher face so many batters. There's been a lot of things that have changed. So if we're against change, then we would never watch another game. But I think there's a deeper issue here. And that is, where does it stop? What do you do next? If this works, calling balls and strikes, surely you don't need the umpires at first, second, third, or in the outfield, because those cameras, if you've been to one of these games, you've actually see where the cameras are. You can aim those cameras any place you want. You can add 50 cameras to the roofs of these stadiums, and you can follow the lines, you can follow the sky, you can be wherever you were, and you're not going to do any worse or any better, and probably better than some of those umpires on the baselines, and they tend to do a fairly good job. So is that's what next? Is that you just leave the home plate umpire and you take out the umpires? What do you do now? Do you aim it on the pitcher's hand to make sure that he doesn't have any spit or anything on the ball? Where do you take this to? So the problem isn't, does it work? It probably in cases right now works pretty good, but how far do you dive into artificial intelligence? Because this is artificial intelligence. 50 years from now, when you're me and you're talking to some young guy who's broadcasting, he says, did you see that robot on first? Did you see how that robot threw out that robot running to third? You're going to think back and say, I remember somebody telling me that artificial intelligence was dangerous, because I don't think we're going to see a game of humans. I think we're going to see a game of artificial intelligence, robots, you call them whatever you want, because it's getting too serious. So my question is, where do we stop it?
Hold on. You had me for about 90%. I'm not going to lie. You had me for 90% of your argument, and then you brought up robots being on first base. You brought up robots on third base. Cut it out. There's not going to be robots replacing multi-million-dollar players in the outfield. Understand that there's not going to be iRobot, and you're not going to see a bunch of robots playing and diving and trying to go for the ball. Understand that when it comes to the game of baseball, it is always going to be and always will involve players. That's the way it's always going to be, and that's the way it's always going to imply. If you ever took away players from MLB, you might as well just put them on MLB The Show, turn on the video game, and just simulate for the rest of the year, and boom, that's your World Series champion. If by that point, the World Series trophy, the Commissioner's Trophy, it doesn't matter anymore if you do not have players on there. Is that what you were asking for, Mike?
Oh, I'm asking for much more than that 50 years from now. Now, that Fisher family that owns Oakland, they've been willing to cut human beings and degrade them and throw them out the door. Why do you think they would not hire a robot to pitch? Of course they would. They would save $45 million. They would have their own robot who demanded no money, and all they would have to do is oil him, grease him, and throw him out there with a computer chip. So saying that that's facetious, I think is being too narrow-minded. I think saying that's ridiculous is being too narrow-minded. I think what I'm saying is you got to be careful and define how deep you go, because there is somebody who would try that.
Okay, I want you to understand something. If you've ever seen any movie on artificial intelligence, if you've ever seen any film with a robot, you understand that robots eventually become so advanced that they eventually defy their master, right? You realize that eventually.
I saw Arnold Schwarzenegger as a robot. He did pretty good.
And he eventually killed the T-2000. I mean, understand that when it comes to the Terminator, when it comes to all these different movies involving robots, they eventually turn on the person who created them. So if the Fisher family did do that, it would backfire on them eventually. Now, one last topic on the MLB is unwritten rules. You're an old timer. You're somebody who's been watching baseball for about 210 years. So I want to know from you and everyone watching around the world, there's all these unwritten rules. There's all these things you do, you don't do. There's been managers like Tony La Russa, the guy, a.k.a. was yelling at a cloud. But when it comes to Tony La Russa, he's always been a big believer in unwritten rules. Personally, I have no problem with it. The more fun you could put into baseball, the better. You know, if you hit a 450-foot home run, absolutely you deserve to watch it. If you want to do a celebration because you hit a 400-foot dinger to right field, you absolutely should. Because you know what? I just hit a home run off of you, not the other way around. If I want to flip my bat because I managed to get a hit off of you, I think I should have the right to do that. But I want to know from you, Mike, unwritten rules of baseball. Do you like them? Do you dislike them? Are you for it? Are you against it? Mike, what you got?
First, Ian, let me start out by saying that was very sarcastic of you to say 210 years. It's only been 150. I only came in when MLB, when professional baseball started in the middle of 1800. So I want to let everybody out there know that Ian has overaged me by about 30 or 40 years. So come on, let's get back in the ballpark and say maybe less than 200, and then I can accept that. Is that fair enough? So he's giving me a break. I just heard him shake his head. I'm sure he felt bad that he aged me to be 210 years old when I'm just a little less than 200. So I can accept that apology. But now let's go into unwritten rules. There's in life is made up of unwritten rules. There's the gray area of life. There's things you do perfectly everybody knows it. There's things you don't do perfectly well, everybody knows it. But life is made up of the gray area. And unwritten rules are the gray area of life. And they should always be there. They're the fun part. There's what makes life exciting is moving between the gray areas. What makes you get up and not be bored was, either positively, yes, you could identify it, or it was absolutely no, you couldn't identify it. Life would be very boring. You'd get up, you go to bed. There would be no excitement. So the gray area makes life. Well, that's what the unwritten rules are. They're the gray area. One umpire says, throw the bat at somebody, I'm going to turn my head. And the other says, you knock their head off, I'm going to turn my head. And the other says, you spit at them and I'm going to toss you out for 5 years. Those are the unwritten rules, and you learn to play by them in life, in sports, baseball, whatever it is. That's what makes it fun.
You know what? As long as you're having fun, and all that matters with MLB. And I know, Mike, you're out here in Vegas, and I'm about to get into the Vegas Golden Knights segment here in hour number 2 of the Sports Angle on PR Connections Radio, the voice of new media. And I just want to do one MLB question with you. Is that okay?
One MLB question? Well, you've already done about 30, but I can take another one.
Can I do one NHL question?
You can do more than one. I'm up to it. I love that sport too. I just can't pronounce all the names like you can.
All right, so doing this NHL segment for hour number 2, talking about the Vegas Golden Knights. And when it comes to the Vegas Golden Knights, there's been all this talk about they need to get rid of one more person. There has been discussions about what player is going to get traded, what player is going to get dealt when it comes to the MLB trade and all that in the NHL. But I want to know, Mike, there has been reports that have come out about certain players that could get traded, but I want to put a dark horse out here for you. I want to put out a player who has been a trademark for the Vegas Golden Knights. I want to put out one player that has been a cornerstone of Vegas. But this guy has a $5 million cap hit. This is a guy who could be traded and would save your troubles in terms of cap space. My dark horse, he's not Alec Martinez. No, he is not Brayden McNabb, which two guys have been talked about. The player that I think could get traded by the Vegas Golden Knights, and I say the New York Rangers could take full opportunity of this. What if Jonathan Marchessault, the guy who was really the face of the franchise alongside Marc-Andre Fleury when they started, the guy who had, I think 60-something points his first year he was here in Vegas. I want to know, Mike, and everyone watching around the world, if you woke up and read the Las Vegas Review-Journal, who makes great articles, by the way, but when it comes to the Las Vegas Review-Journal, if you read the opening headline that Marc-Andre Fleury, just like him, Jonathan Marchessault, has been traded by the Vegas Golden Knights in order to save cap space, I want to know what your reaction would be, not only as a hockey fan, but as a Vegas Golden Knights fan. What would be your reaction if they had to trade not Brayden McNabb, not Alec Martinez, but ended up being Jonathan Marchessault as the guy they ended up trading?
First of all, I would be more shocked if they brought back Marc-Andre Fleury and traded Marchessault, but one of our famous friends, Vegas Karen, would be absolutely thrilled if they did that. But knowing that's not what you meant, I believe that you have a goalie, and I believe you have one defenseman. If they were going to do Marchessault, unless they just got such a stellar trade offer that nobody could refuse it, they would not have done the Riley Smith re-sign and the Pacioretty trade. They could have let them both go and made that happen. But I think they want to keep those lines pretty close. So I think it's down to someplace on a defensive player and possibly a goalie who are going to get them into balance. I just do not see them letting Marchessault go. Now, again, it's like all things. I'll repeat myself. There could be a trade offer that's so good that you just can't resist it. It can be just the best thing in the world. And of course, any of these professional teams and any of these owners are going to look at that kind of trade. I mean, if it's like the Edmonton trade 30 years ago, of course you jump right on top of it. If it's like Edmonton wanting to give you their best player in the world right now, of course you jump on top of it. There's no doubt about that. But I don't think that's in the offing. And I don't think that that's going to happen. It would have happened already. So it's going to be a defenseman or a goalie, but more than likely, there's going to be a badly injured player to start the season, either on defense or in the goal. And so we're going to see a very, very, very hurt player on long-term IR to start the season. That's Vegas Mike's perspective.
Hold on. Wait a minute. Mike, I can't let you leave off of that. Come on. You're saying that the Vegas Golden Knights are going to abuse the long-term IR, that they're going to put a certain player on long-term IR just to get rid of some millions of dollars off of payroll. Is that what you're saying, Vegas Mike? Are you saying
they won't do what Tampa Bay did? Of course they will. All of these smart people. It's not about doing it or not doing it. It's about being smart. It's an option.
Hey, who? Give me a name. I want to hear a name from Mike here in Las Vegas, Nevada. Who would be a player that the Vegas Golden Knights would purposely put on long-term IR just because they needed to clear up cap space? Give me a name.
Well, I'll give you a name as soon as you tell me who's going to get hurt. I'll tell you who the most damaged, oldest players are who get hurt all the time, the same players that got hurt last year. That's who's going to be hurt. I say the option is they're going to play through the preseason. Somebody's going to get hurt. No doubt about it. They always do. If it's one of the players that got hurt last year, they're going on IRR. I believe their preference would be to take either somebody in the goal or somebody on defense and trade them to clear the cap space. That's my true opinion, and that's a professional opinion, and that's what I would say. But if that does not happen and they can't find it, you're going to see somebody on IR just like in Tampa Bay.
There was a quote that came out of President of Hockey Operations, George McPhee. And if you understand Bruce Cassidy and you understand what he did in Boston, it actually makes a lot of sense. There was a report that came out that the Vegas Golden Knights are doubling down on defense. And the reason why the Vegas Golden Knights have signed so many defensemen this offseason is because that's their main vocal point. There's a reason why they traded for a defenseman in the Evgeny Dadonov trade. There's a reason why they signed 25-year-old William Rydell, who came from the Philadelphia Flyers. There's a reason why they have about 8 different defensemen in the minors right now that are all between the ages of 21 and 25. I believe that statement is one of the most accurate ones that we have right now. So them putting a defenseman on IR, putting a defenseman on the trade block, I don't see it happening because the Vegas Golden Knights have doubled down this offseason on getting as many defensemen as they can. They even got the 19-year-old Joe Fleming who they signed as an undrafted free agent who they brought into the development camp. Really good, a feel-good story. But, Mike, everyone watching around the world, if the Vegas Golden Knights are doubling down on defense, what does that tell you? Does that tell you that, A, they do not have trust in who's in net, so they're putting as many defensemen around him as possible? Or B, that they've lost so many offensive-minded guys, they've lost so many forwards who could put the puck in the back of the net, that they are doubling down on defensemen so they can limit the amount of goals that are going to put in the back of the net because they know they're only going to put up maybe 2 goals, 3 goals at the max. What does it tell you, Mike? What does it tell everyone around the world? Because I got my opinion on it. But I want to know, Mike, with them adding all these defensemen this offseason, they've added at least 4 this offseason. What does it tell you as a Vegas Golden Knights fan, as a hockey fan, with them doubling down on defense?
First of all, it tells me they weren't happy with their backup defensemen last year, the people who would come in as substitutes. That's all it tells me. It also tells me if you're loading up on defensemen, you're willing to let somebody go. It tells me you don't need 10 defensemen. You need 8. So it tells me somebody's available to go. That's what it tells me, because you don't need that many if you're going to keep your best defenseman. Secondly, you hit it right on the nose. They are not going to decimate their offense any further. Why did they spend all that money last year to get one of the best offensemen in the league?
Because at the time they didn't have enough scoring, so they wanted to get one of the best snipers in hockey.
And they got him. And why? And they were willing to give up Pacioretty this year to keep Smith. The trade for Pacioretty was Smith. It wasn't what they got or didn't get from New York. Their trade for Pacioretty was Smith. Smith was Pacioretty's trade. And so they were willing to keep Smith. They want to keep Marchessault. They want to keep that grouping together because it's a very effective grouping. They are not going to decimate the offense anymore. It's already been decimated with Pacioretty going. Defense, as you know, does not win anymore in the NHL. It's offense. Come on. The games won in the Stanley Cup last year in the playoffs were all offense. Some of those scores were 10 goals. And so the Knights know that, and the coach knows that, and the owners know that. They're not going to decimate the offense. They already took the risk with Pacioretty, and it's done. It's a goalie, it's a defenseman, or it's somebody going into IR. That's my view. No more decimation of the offense.
But you mentioned the Stanley Cup Finals. Well, here's my rebuttal to you. The Colorado Avalanche Tampa Bay Lightning had the number 2 and number 3 rated defense in the NHL. The Colorado Avalanche with Cale Makar and Bowen Byram had the top 3 defense in the NHL. Tampa Bay Lightning, when they won their cups, they had Ryan McDonough, they had Victor Hedman, they had Mikhail Sergachev. So I actually will disagree with you respectfully, and I say that if you watch the Stanley Cup Finals, the reason why the Vegas Golden Knights are loading up on defense is because they watched the Stanley Cup Final. Because they saw how dominant the defensemen were in Colorado, because they saw during their back-to-back Stanley Cups how well the defense did for Tampa Bay. And if you really want to go even one step more, the Washington Capitals, when they beat the Vegas Golden Knights, yes, they had Alex Ovechkin, they had all those guys, but you had one of the best defensemen in John Carlson who was on defense. St. Louis Blues had this really good defenseman in Alex Pietrangelo. Oh, wait, where's Alex Pietrangelo now? That's right, he's here in Vegas. So I'm actually going to respectfully disagree with you, Mike. I think that the reason why Vegas is doubling down on defense is because that Colorado and Tampa Bay showed that in order to win a cup, you have to have a dominant defense. If you do not have a top 5 defense in the NHL, you do not win a Stanley Cup.
Top 5 defenses, but the offense won those games. There was 10 goals scored in some of those games, weren't there, Ian? There was 10 goals scored. It didn't matter how good your goalie was. It doesn't matter how good your defense was. It was the offense that won the game. So we're going to disagree here. I think they want a good defense. I think they want an experienced defense. I think they want a strong defense, but I don't think they're going to give up any more scoring to get it. I just don't. I think it would be idiotic and it would weaken the team and demoralize the team if they couldn't score more points.
I do have one last comment, and this comes from a Lorene Rakelli. Lorene Rakelli, thank you for watching the show. And she mentioned that if the Vegas Golden Knights get rid of players, can they just call people up from the Henderson Silver Knights? Now, Lorene, I want to answer your question. I know Mike's going to answer your question as well. But here's the thing about the Henderson Silver Knights. Yes, they have a bunch of young defensemen. I'm a huge fan of Brendan Bryson. I like Caden Korzak, Connor Cochran, Maxim Rusharev. I am a big fan of all those guys. But the problem is that if you trade a Jonathan Marchessault, you trade a Alec Martinez, you trade a Brady McNabb, they have veteran leadership. They have experience. They have hundreds of NHL games over these young 21-year-old and 22-year-olds. What you're going to be missing from these guys from Henderson is you're going to have all these guys who've played less than 10 NHL games, and they would be replacing guys who've played well over 100. So that's the risk that's involved with the Vegas Golden Knights if they manage to trade a Jonathan Marchessault, trade a Alec Martinez, trade a Brady McNabb, who have hundreds of NHL games and miles on their license, where as you have a Caden Korzak and you have a Connor Cochran, those guys are young, they're unestablished, they're very raw talent out there in Henderson. Mike, what do you think? Because Lorraine, thanks for the comment. You made a great point. I just wanted to say that, yes, they could bring up guys from Henderson, but they won't have the talent and they won't have the experience that the guys they'd be replacing do.
I think actually how you answer that question is last year, the most recent experience. The Golden Knights entering early January were at the top of the and we're in first place, if I remember right. And they started getting the injuries. And so they started doing exactly what was suggested there by Lorene and what you're talking about. They started subbing in the Silver Knights, and they just didn't have the experience, and it drove them crazy, and it made them suffer. And some close games they should have won, and they just couldn't do it because the experience wasn't there. So I don't think you want a repeat of last year, and that's what that suggestion is that you repeat last year, and we see what happens when you're filling in too much with inexperience. It just doesn't get you there. You take the Henderson Silver Knights, if they've got 30 players, maybe 5 of them, maybe 10 of them, hopefully will eventually make it. Ten more players, 20 players, and 10 of them are never going to make it. You're really degrading the team, not because they're not good hockey players. Heck, they're a lot better than I could be, and probably most people. So it's not degrading the players. It's just saying, would they ever be of that quality to be in the NHL? And last year's experience was enough to say, no, that's not a good idea.
And I will give a shout out to Twitter, by the way, because all the people watching around the world at Sports Angle on PR. And someone asked a question for you, Mike. Somebody actually asked a question for you. And someone said, based on the report that agents in the NHL told their players not to negotiate with the Vegas Golden Knights, based off the multiple reports that there were players who were told to stay away from the Vegas Golden Knights, the question on Twitter was, do you think that Vegas has beeped themselves when it comes to how they treat free agents and how they treat their players? So I'm pretty much going to ask that question in an actual formal way. Mike, how bad is that for Vegas that there were multiple agents this offseason who told their clients to not negotiate with the Vegas Golden Knights based on how they've treated their players?
Recollection is that's a great question. And I appreciate the question, and I'm sure there's a lot of people who would answer it differently. But I think there's several teams in the NHL where that probably is not an uncommon occurrence. Montreal may be one, and there may be a couple more. So that's not an uncommon occurrence. But I would say it depends on the money. It's all about the money. They're saying don't negotiate with them, don't go there. They'll do this, they'll do that. That happens with all the teams. Come on. With the salary cap in the NHL, with the way they do it, it's a common occurrence. So are they telling them that? Of course, some of them are, but they're telling them about other teams. So I don't think it's an uncommon occurrence. Have the Vegas Golden Knights stabbed themselves? Possibly. But when it comes to the money, if the money's there, they're going to come. That's just what it is. They're going to come. So yes, it's probably true they've been telling them that, but it's probably also true that if they got the right money, they would come.
Now, this has been a fantastic episode 19 of the Sports Angle on PR Connections Radio, the voice of new media. Now, Mike, I'm going to give you 60 seconds to plug anything you want. Tell everybody anything you want for the next 60 seconds. So, Mike, plug yourself. Tell everybody what you do.
First of all, I'm not 210 years old. I'm closer to 180. So I want that due respect done. I can still think, walk, and talk at 180 years old. Secondly, I want people to think positive. I don't want them to give up because of the inflation. I don't want them to give up because of the high gas prices. I don't want them to give up because of the politics. Think positive, move every day ahead, work as hard as you can, and take the next day on, and don't give up. Be positive, be hardworking. When troubles happen, that's the way life is. You learn from them and move on. So take the next day, one day at a time, everybody, including Ian.
And we got 2 minutes left, so I got to give a shout out to all the people on PR Connections Radio. If you're into politics, you got Brian Gardner's We Have the Power. You got Voices of Humanity with Sandra. Excellent episode they did recently. I put it on our Facebook page at Sports Angle on PR. And Shirley, she made some excellent content earlier this week. I'm a big fan of her, of what she does. Also, big shout out to Guy Dawson for everything he's doing with PR Connections Radio. If it wasn't for him, we wouldn't be doing what we're doing right now. So I got to give a shout out to Guy Dawson. And follow all of the content on prconnectionsradio.com, the voice of new media. Follow them on all accounts at PR Connections Radio. And if you want to follow our show on all social medias, at Sports Angle on PR. We do poll questions. We put up all these different quizzes and all these different Q&As. So we are very vocal on social media. Find us on Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube. Find us on Instagram. We're pretty much everywhere and anywhere here on the Sports Angle on PR Connections Radio, the voice of new media. And next episode 20. Wow, we're almost 20 episodes in now. Episode 20 of the Sports Angle on PR Connections Radio. I actually have a fantastic guest lined up for that one. Stay tuned. Don't go anywhere because that episode's going to be amazing. And I also want to say thanks to Mike for coming on the show. It was an amazing show. I had an incredible time recording this episode with him. So this is the Sports Angle on PR Connections Radio. I'm your host, Ian Rakelli. Follow me on social media at Ian Rakelli 18. That is IANRACHIELE 18. And until next time, have a good one and stay safe.